Jake Claver just went on national TV and said XRP is going to $10,000. Not $10, not $100, $10,000. And in the same breath, he said the stock market is about to crash 50% and that Satoshi Nakamoto himself is about to move his Bitcoin for the first time in over a decade. If your first reaction is, "That's insane," you're not wrong to think that. But before you write this off, I want to walk you through exactly what he said, why some of his past predictions have actually played out, why others have completely failed, and what's really worth paying attention to underneath all the noise. Let's start with who this guy actually is. Jake Claver is the CEO of Digital Ascension Group, and he's become one of the most talked about voices in the XRP space, partly because he doesn't hold back. He recently sat down with Brad Lea, a major podcast host with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and that interview has exploded. It's currently one of the fastest growing XRP videos on YouTube this week, massively outperforming what that channel normally gets. People are watching this thing in huge numbers, and the reason is simple. Claver doesn't give safe, hedged predictions. He gives numbers, specific ones, and specific numbers get attention whether they come true or not. Alright, so here's exactly what he's claiming in this interview. First, the headline number, XRP to $10,000 within 24 months. To put that in perspective, XRP is trading right now in the $1 range. Getting to $10,000 would mean a move of more than 500,000%. For comparison, Bitcoin took about 4 years to go from $1,200 to $68,000 during its last major cycle, and even that was considered one of the most explosive runs in financial history. Claver is talking about a move that dwarfs that in half the time. Second claim, a stock market crash of 30 to 50%, and he's saying it could happen within days, not months. He's tying this to something called the reverse carry trade unwind, plus geopolitical pressure points like the Strait of Hormuz situation, plus what he calls a scripted global financial reset. And third, maybe the wildest claim of the three, he says Satoshi Nakamoto, the anonymous creator of Bitcoin who has never moved his coins and is sitting on over 1 million Bitcoin, is about to move his wallet. If that actually happened, it would be one of the single biggest events in crypto history. Full stop. So that's the headline. Now let's talk about why Claver thinks any of this makes sense, because his reasoning is actually more interesting than the headline number itself. His core argument is about network efficiency, not hype. He says that the price of XRP directly determines how much value the XRP ledger can move at scale. Here's his logic in plain terms. If XRP is sitting at $1, you need 1 million tokens to move $1 million. If XRP is at $10, you only need 100,000 tokens to move that same amount. And if XRP were sitting at $1 million per token, a single token could settle that transfer. In his view, for XRP to actually function as global settlement infrastructure for banks, governments, and tokenized markets, the price has to rise dramatically, not because of speculation, but because the system literally needs higher value per token to handle that scale of movement efficiently. He's also tying this to a concept he calls the domino theory. The idea that once enough institutional infrastructure goes live on the XRP ledger, you get a cascading effect. ETFs locking up supply, banks adopting it for settlement, tokenized real-world assets needing a rail to move on. Each piece makes the next piece more likely, and together they create what he calls a supply shock, a moment where there simply isn't enough XRP available to meet institutional demand, forcing the price up rapidly rather than gradually. Now here's where I want to slow down, because this is the part most reaction videos skip entirely. The receipts. Has Jake Claver actually been right before? The honest answer is mixed, and it's worth knowing both sides. On the credibility side, Claver correctly called things like the passage of the Genius Act. and pointed early to geopolitical pressure points like the Strait of Hormuz situation before they became major news stories. His firm works directly with family offices and high net worth individuals, and he's publicly stated that ultra-wealthy families are quietly accumulating large XRP positions, a claim that lines up with what we've actually seen with institutional ETF inflows this year. But here's the other side. Claver predicted XRP would hit $100 by the end of 2025. At the time, XRP was trading between $2 and $3, so the target needed something like a 3,000 to 5,000% gain in a matter of months. It did not happen. XRP actually finished 2025 lower than where it started that prediction, as the broader market sold off. He maintained that call all the way until December, even after it became clear it wasn't going to hit, and he reportedly placed a bet on it. This caught the attention of other respected voices in the XRP community. One well-known commentator, who goes by Pharaoh X33, responded to Claver's most recent 4-digit prediction by saying he'd love to see it happen, but doesn't believe it will, and suggested the community focus on more grounded targets instead. Another crypto commentator publicly said that watching some of these predictions causes what he called second-hand embarrassment, specifically calling out the pattern of XRP influencers attaching enormous numbers to the asset without it ever materializing. So where does that leave us? I think the fair read is this. Claver is clearly plugged into real institutional conversations. The family office accumulation angle and his track record on a few macro calls give him more credibility than your average crypto influencer. But his price targets specifically have a track record of being aggressive to the point of not happening. The $100 call failed. The timeline on $10,000 should be treated with real skepticism, even by people who like and follow him. Let's talk about what's actually realistic based on what's happening right now, separate from any single person's prediction. XRP spot ETFs were approved earlier this year and have been pulling in consistent inflows, with no outflow days recorded since launch. Goldman Sachs has disclosed a real public position in XRP ETFs worth over $150 million. The SEC and CFTC have jointly classified XRP as a commodity, which is a genuinely significant regulatory milestone, and the Clarity Act is moving through the Senate with bipartisan support, which would lock that classification in permanently. Those are facts, they're verifiable, and they represent real progress for XRP as an asset. None of that requires you to believe in a $10,000 price target or a stock market crash within days. The institutional case for XRP is strong on its own without the extreme numbers attached to it. So here's my actual take, separate from the hype. I don't think anyone, including Jake Claver, can responsibly tell you XRP is going to $10,000 in 24 months with any real certainty. That kind of move would require a transformation in how the entire global financial system operates, not just a good few months for crypto. It's not impossible in some far future sense, but putting a specific 24-month timeline on it is exactly the kind of claim that's made his past predictions miss. What I do think is worth paying attention to is the underlying argument about utility and price. The idea that XRP needs higher value per token to function at a true institutional settlement scale is a real and reasonable thesis, even if you strip away the specific number, and the institutional accumulation trend he's pointing to lines up with things we can actually verify independently, like the ETF inflows and the Goldman Sachs position. So my advice, watch the interview if you're interested, because Claver is a genuinely engaging speaker and some of his macro thinking is worth hearing. But separate the entertainment value from the financial reality. Watch the Clarity Act's progress in the Senate. Watch whether ETF inflows keep climbing. Watch whether real institutional settlement use cases actually go live on the XRP ledger. Those are the things that will tell you whether XRP's fundamental case is strengthening, regardless of whether any single prediction, including a $10,000 target, ever comes true. As always, this is not financial advice. These are predictions from a public figure, not guarantees, and crypto remains one of the most volatile asset classes that exist. Do your own research, think critically about big claims, even the exciting ones, and never invest more than you're prepared to lose.